Have you ever wondered why some people have about the same time of learning English and they sometimes learn at different speeds? Why does it is it that some people have zero issues learning a language, English or any other language, at the speed of light, where others have been studying it for years and years and they don't seem to be able to communicate even like the most basic ideas? Hi, I'm Chris Howard. Welcome to my channel. For those who don't know me, I have been teaching English as a second or a foreign language for over 20 years now. First in Brazil, my native country, and now in the United States. As you can notice, this is episode 2 of a series called How Languages Are Learned, in which I'm discussing what happens in the 5 to 7 year that usually takes a person or a student, a child, anybody, to learn a second or third or fourth language. In the first episode, we talked about three key concepts from the field of first language acquisition that helps us understand how a language is learned and why kids make mistakes like woked or bringed. If you miss it, I'll go ahead and link it in the description down below. In this episode, we're going to discuss key concepts from the field of second language acquisition in order to understand how languages are learned. So, we're going to get a glimpse into the second language acquisition field with two main concepts. The first concept I want to bring to our attention today is the concept of comprehensible input by Krashen. If you remember from our first episode, we talked about how people's first language is learned in a natural process called acquisition. So that was one concept from our last video. In order to happen naturally, the interactions in which a baby goes through with the surrounding people in their lives have to be meaningful. That is, the baby has to have some sort of context clues, like some sort of image or some sort of feedback, um, in order to understand, in order to learn what words mean, and the sound, in order to associate the sound of words with the meaning of words or the image of an object with the sound of a word. Question builds on this idea of meaningful interactions and goes on to say that the way to acquire a second language is through comprehensible input. Basically, like the idea and understanding that what happens in the first language should also be happening in the second language in order to make an impact, in order for learning to happen. So basically, comprehensible input for question are messages that can be understood in either oral or written language. In other words, to learn a language, you have to be exposed to chunks of language that you can understand through context clues, the environment, feedback from a person. Let me give you an example. If you say a word in Portuguese, let's say the word bala, the one I'm projecting there for you guys, out of context, and you don't know what that word means, I can have my students repeat it. The students should be able to, after they repeat it for quite a while, when they see the image there, they are able to say the word, to read the word. They, after repeating many times, they also should be able to pronounce the word. However, if I ask them what the word means without telling them or showing them what that word means, only if they knew it before that, but if they have never seen this word before, have never been exposed to it before, they won't be able to answer what that word means. Now, if I actually show you what a bala means, which is this one, okay? If I actually show you, and associated with that, I show you the written version of the word as well as I say it, the likelihood of you becoming aware of the meaning of this word increases. Of course, if I show this to you today and never again, you probably won't remember it in a few weeks or months or even maybe tonight. But if that is repeatedly introduced to you and repeatedly reinforced, the likelihood of you learning that word now that you know what it means is higher. Um, when people talk about comprehensible input, an image like this is usually displayed. In this image, the I is the current stage of language competence, how much people know already of a language. So let's say I already know that you guys now just been exposed to the word bala. And perhaps that's the only word you know in Portuguese. So that's how much you know. So bala would be how much you know. And the plus one is what it's learned from the environment, how much you can learn from the environment. So, for example, it would be what's new to you. So, for example, if I say, esta é uma bala, what you already know in that sentence is the word bala. However, the structure, esta é uma, or this is one, is what's new to you. So you could somewhat understand that, or there's a potential of you either understanding or learning they structure, the beginning of that sentence that I just told to you in Portuguese, because there is something in there in that sentence that you already been exposed to. So the plus one is the language structure or the words, anything in the language sample that is new, but that could potentially be understood. So the usual recommendation for people learning a second language would be that teachers try to work on adding some challenge by adding this plus one, by making the plus one comprehensible, making it something that is challenging. So it would have to be slightly higher what students already know, but not as difficult or as challenging that it becomes overwhelming and impossible. So if I was here trying to teach you Portuguese and I gave you this whole lecture on the ingredients of a bala, of a piece of candy, or the ingredients, how is it made, you probably wouldn't understand it. But if I actually have that object in my hand and I'm telling you esta é uma bala, you can probably start to picking up that esta é uma means this is a, so that's it. So as a first tip, if you are an English language teacher and you're trying to help your students, when you're trying to decide what to teach next, how to move forward, a tip should be that the plus one should be one step beyond where they are, but not too overwhelming that just goes over their head. So let me show you an example of how that concept plays out in a classroom with English learners at different proficiency levels. So let's imagine here there's a teacher and she's teaching, science, the parts of a flower, and she has that picture on her screen, and she's labeling as she go. And then she says, a flower has multiple parts: bud, petal, stem, leaves. In order to grow, sunlight and water are required. In that class, lower level students will probably pick up new vocabulary. For example, stem, petal, flower. Or they could even pick up simpler language structures such as blank has blank, so just the simple construction here at the beginning. This would be most likely for level ones and students, beginning and pre-intermediate students would probably be picking up this these language structures and vocabulary from this input. However, higher students will probably pick up more advanced vocabulary such as multiple, requires, sunlight, as well as more complex sentence structures like the second sentence, which is using passive voice, or even the structure in order to do something, something else needs to happen. That would be something that they could potentially be learning. All students at any level could be thinking of the spelling of the words that the teacher is projecting, especially if it's the first time that they are seeing this in writing. In any of these cases, there is a chance that the students are silent and they're looking at you. It's important to keep in mind that there's probably a lot going on and probably different things in their head, even though it looks like they're not even paying attention, maybe. So, as you can see, it all depends on where they are in their language development continuum. In other words, their I. So, if they are starting to learn English, this is probably they're going to pick up. As they are progressing in learning English a little bit more advanced, this over here is probably what they're going to be picking up. Another thing that I want to bring to your attention at this point is this pyramid image that TESOL released a couple of years ago. So when we talk about the speed in which our kids are learning and how fast they're learning, and also how much they have to learn, um, if you look at the top of the pyramid, you see these are the levels of language acquisition, and these are the things that they have to learn. So the variety of utterances. Okay, so the kinds of sentences that they have to learn, how much vocabulary, the kinds of words they have to learn, and where and when to use language, in what context, in what situations, for school, for work, for just with friends and family. So this here pyramid exemplifies or pictures how much they have to learn. So if you look at the top of the pyramid, the level 1 students who don't really know English, they don't have as much to grasp in terms of types of sentences, types of words, and contexts as students at the level 3, at the level 4, at the level 5. The farther away they are in terms of learning a language, the more they have to learn, as you can see here. So, having that in mind, if let's say how much they know in terms of English, they're right here. If you're speaking at the level here to them, there's not much that they're going to learn. But if they're +1, so this is their I, this is where they are in the language learning continuum. Their +1 should be like probably in this area here. So if you're trying to introduce to a newcomer passive voice, it's way too far along the continuum. So the reason I wanted to show you this pyramid is also because I wanted you to think that lower goes faster. So they will progress much faster at these two levels than when they are here. In other words, what I'm trying to say is because students at levels 1 and 2 have less to learn, you can expect them to progress faster, as what they have to grasp is simpler, in a sense. As their knowledge of English or their proficiency level increases, what they have to learn is more challenging, and then it will probably take longer. to progress. Here's a good way to look at it. Lower is faster. The second concept and last that I want to talk to you today in this video has to do with emotions and can definitely interfere on the speed in which students are learning. So that concept is called affective filter. Krashen coined this term to refer to a psychological barrier in the brain that is triggered by negative feelings. For example, if students feel anxious, bored, or threatened in their classrooms or environment, the affective filter, will go up and block any incoming messages, and that in turn will prevent any new learning. This term was introduced in the 70s, but it actually goes hand in hand with current research and findings in the social emotional learning field. So if you thought you had heard that somewhere else, you probably did. So now I believe it's time for us to go back to the question that I asked at the beginning of this video. Why do students learn at different speeds? And this in the video today, we talked about two concepts that are trying to answer the question in terms of language. So the first one is comprehensible input, meaning students are learning at different speeds because where they are in the language continuum is probably different. So even though they are exposed to the same amount of language, what they're going to learn is going to be different depending on what they're going to pick up from what they're hearing and reading is going to be different depending on how much they know and where they are in their language development. The second concept that addresses that is the affective filter. How students perceive their environment emotionally will trigger or not an affective filter that will come up and block any new learning. So that's a second thing, a second concept from this field of second language acquisition that helps us understand what's going on and why are they learning in different speeds. So I hope that helped you guys at least start thinking about the question of why students learn at different speeds. And in the next episode of this series, I am going to share with you types of words, and no, we're not having a grammar lesson, that are usually learned first. So I'm going to share with you the order, the usual order, and the types of words that are learned and in what order when you are acquiring a second language. And also what I'll try to share with you what the beginner learners, what their main challenges are. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing for more information about English learners, teaching English as a second and foreign language. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.